Are you thinking about buying a waterfront property? Well, before you dive in, there are some super important things that you need to know that can make or break your waterfront dream home experience. So stay tuned and don't buy that lakeside paradise until you watch this video first.
Hey everyone, welcome to our channel or welcome back to our channel. If you're new here and you want to learn everything there is to know about the Charlotte area, make sure you click that like and subscribe button. That way you'll be the first to be notified what's going on in our local market. We're going to be putting out videos every single week on what it's like to live, work, eat, sleep, and play here.
I'm Heather and this is Doug, and we are local Charlotte real estate agents licensed in North and South Carolina. And we get calls every single day from people just like you looking to move to the Charlotte area, and we absolutely love it. So if you're looking to make a move to the lake or have any questions about the Charlotte area in general, please reach out. Call, text, email, or schedule a Zoom using the link down below. And we would love to help you with any questions you may have.
All right, so let's get after it. Today we are diving into the crucial topic of anyone thinking about buying a waterfront home. As you can imagine, there's a whole lot more to it than just a beautiful view. And if you're not aware of the rules, regulations, and permits involved, it can end up costing you a lot more in the long term. Not only financially, but also with your ability to be able to enjoy and fully utilize your lakefront property.
We're here to help guide you through every step of the process and ensure that you're making an informed decision about your waterfront purchase.
Yep, with over 17 years of combined experience, Heather and I have seen it all when it comes to waterfront properties in the Charlotte area. From Lake Norman to Lake Wylie and Mountain Island, each property is unique and they all have their own set of rules and considerations. These three lakes span into numerous counties in North and South Carolina, so it's super important to know how your specific area governs.
And if you've purchased a lakefront property in the past, comment down below and let us know what are some of the issues that you've run into buying a waterfront property. We would love to hear from you and your experiences with buying waterfront property. So let's jump right in. First thing we want to talk about is bulkheads. Doug, why don't you explain why they are so important?
So for anyone unfamiliar with that terminology, a bulkhead is essentially a barrier that protects the shoreline from erosion and storm surges, acting basically like a first defense between your property line and the water.
Exactly, and bulkheads can vary in material. You'll find wood, concrete, metal, or even composite. The material, age, and condition of the bulkhead will impact not only its durability, but also its potential cost of maintenance and/or replacement.
Yep, absolutely. A thorough inspection is crucial because bulkheads can weaken over time, especially with constant exposure to waves and weather. So if you're buying a property with an older bulkhead, you might be looking at some significant cost to reinforce or to replace it.
And keep in mind, maintaining the bulkhead is typically the homeowner's responsibility, so understanding its current condition can save you from some pretty substantial and unexpected repairs down the road.
So next up is docks. Docks are obviously a huge selling point for lakefront properties, but they can also bring along some pretty hefty expenses, especially if you need to build or repair one.
Absolutely. Dock construction costs can vary depending on the dock size, the material you want to use, and the local regulations. A simple wooden dock might be a bit more affordable, but materials like composite or concrete that will last a lot longer in harsh conditions are a little more expensive, so you definitely want to consider that when looking at the dock.
For sure, if you're buying a property with an existing dock, don't forget to get it inspected for wear and tear as well. Rotting wood, rusty metal, or structural instability can lead to costly repairs. We usually recommend getting a separate third-party dock inspection from that general inspection of the house and a company that specializes in building and repairs. And obviously, we're happy to give recommendations of a couple great vendors as far as that's concerned.
Yep, and remember, adding a dock can require permits, which brings additional costs and time. So understanding the local regulations on dock building and/or repair can help you budget and avoid any surprises down the road.
So utilities are another important aspect to consider, especially since lakefront properties are often sometimes in a more rural or remote area.
Right. Some properties may not be connected to public utility, meaning you'll need a well for water, a septic system for waste, and maybe even solar or propane power if electrical lines don't reach the area.
Yeah, adding these systems can be very expensive and time-consuming as well. Wells and septic systems alone can cost thousands. You'll need to keep them maintained and updated over the years. If a property's too secluded, even getting a reliable internet connection can be a challenge.
Also, keep in mind that utilities require additional permits, and local authorities might have specific regulations for installing them in waterfront areas. So make sure to factor in any of these hidden costs.
All right, HOAs. Everybody loves HOAs. HOAs are another important factor to keep in mind when buying a lakefront property. Not all properties are going to have an HOA, but those that do will come with additional fees and restrictions.
And these HOAs often set rules specifically for waterfront properties. For instance, they may regulate dock sizes, the type of watercraft that is allowed, or even landscaping rules to preserve the shoreline.
Yeah, these fees can definitely add up, and the rules might impact your enjoyment of the property, especially if you have plans for additions or changes. Be sure to review the HOA's regulations and budget for annual dues.
Yep, and while we're talking about regulations, this is probably the perfect time to mention Duke Energy.
Yeah, so when you buy a property on Lake Norman, what you're actually purchasing is the structure itself, boathouses, docks, and the land immediately surrounding your home. But the submerged land and the water, those are actually managed and owned by Duke Energy.
Correct, and that means they play a big role in what you can and can't do around the water. As a homeowner, you'll need to follow their guidelines and sometimes get permits for certain projects.
Absolutely. So if you want to build or modify a dock, you're going to need to get approval from Duke Energy. They've got very specific standards to make sure everything is safe and environmentally friendly. If you guys have any specific questions about buying property on the lake or navigating these regulations, please feel free to reach out. We'd obviously be happy to help.
Let's circle back to docks for a moment and talk about permits. Just because there's a dock on the property does not mean that it's properly permitted or that you're even allowed to use it.
Yeah, that's a great point. Some of these older docks that may have been grandfathered in under old regulations, or they may have been built without a permit altogether. Duke Energy ultimately gets to decide whether they meet safety and environmental standards. So definitely want to get that checked out first.
Before purchasing, check with Duke to verify the dock permit status and make sure that you're legally allowed to use it. This can prevent major issues like finding out the fact that the dock isn't usable or that repairs to the dock are prohibited.
So if you're considering vacant lakefront land, one major thing to look into is whether you're going to have access to the essential services like water, sewage, and electricity, like we mentioned earlier.
Adding these utilities to vacant land can be complicated and costly. For example, drilling a well requires testing for water quality and depth, and a septic system needs specific soil conditions. In some cases, septic permits can be difficult to obtain if the land isn't suitable. They also dictate how many bedrooms you can have in your home.
Plus, connecting to power may involve additional cost if power lines need to be extended to reach your property. So it's definitely a good idea to consult local utility providers in advance just to understand what's available and what kind of cost you might expect.
All right, we've covered bulkheads, docks, and permits, but there's something that can catch a lakefront property owner by surprise. Rules about tree removal. If you're new to waterfront property, you may not realize that cutting down trees isn't always as straightforward as it seems.
Yeah, that is so true. In many waterfront areas, especially around Charlotte, trees are protected as part of environmental regulations, and they play a big role in maintaining the shoreline stability, preventing erosion, and protecting the water quality. Unauthorized tree removal without first checking with Duke Energy is a huge no-no and can lead to some pretty serious consequences.
Exactly. These rules aren't just guidelines, they're often legal requirements. In many cases, removing trees without the proper authorization can lead to hefty fines, and in some cases, the property owner might be required to restore the area by replanting trees or adding other vegetation.
Yep, and these regulations can apply to any vegetation that's considered part of the natural buffer zone between your property and the water. So literally, even trimming or pruning trees in that area may require a permit depending on the local laws or the HOA guidelines. So just make sure you check ahead.
So before making any changes to the trees or the vegetation along the shoreline, check with the local authorities or the Environmental Service Agency. They can tell you what's allowed, what requires a permit, and what you definitely should avoid.
Yep, and here's where a knowledgeable real estate agent can help too. They'll be familiar with these regulations and they could advise you on what's permitted and what consequences might be for violating these rules.
Absolutely. Cutting down a tree without permission might seem like a small thing, but on a lakefront property, it can lead to significant fines, restoration costs, or even affect your ability for certain types of insurance if you're found to be in violation.
Lastly, let's talk about the shoreline's history. So climate change and other environmental factors can definitely impact the lake's levels, of course, and sometimes the shorelines are going to shift over time.
Yeah, understanding the history of the water level and your specific water depth can help you gauge whether the property is at risk of flooding or erosion. Rising water levels might mean part of the property could eventually be underwater, or that you need to invest in protective measures like seawalls.
Yeah, 100%. And on the other hand of that, lower water level could prevent what size boat you can have docked at, if any boat at all. So it's important to find out about water levels in the past years, what they've experienced in severe drought conditions, because lower water levels can move the shoreline, obviously further from your property in some situations. And this can have a huge effect on your property's value and obviously your access to the water.
Talking to experts in the specific area, or even just talking to some of the neighbors and reviewing local environmental studies, can help you get a sense of the lake's history and any potential risks tied to the property. It's all about doing your due diligence in advance and making sure you make an informed decision.
So there you have it. From bulkheads to docks to boundaries and shorelines, buying a lakefront home is a lot more complex than you might expect. Taking the time to do thorough research and consider all these factors is going to make a huge decision in how things turn out for you long term.
Buying a lakefront property is a significant investment, and taking the time to understand everything from bulkheads to boundaries can greatly improve your chances in it being a positive experience and everything that you were hoping and expecting that lakefront dream home to be.
All right, guys, so that's all we have for you today. We hope that you found this video useful and helpful and informative in your search for a lakefront property. We make these videos every single week, and we do it because we want to help you guys. We absolutely love it. So please feel free to call, text, email, however you want to get a hold of us. We would love to hear from you, and we would love to be a resource when you're making your move to Charlotte.
So until the next time, we'll catch you later.